From Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment number 38, H.R. 4394, which would prohibit the use of taxpayer funds from going to the Department of Energy's implementation of its proposed industrial decarbonization roadmap. The Industrial Decarbonization Roadmap identifies and targets 4 different categories of so-called CO2 emitters: residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation sectors. In other words, pretty much every aspect of our lives. What does this portend in the real world? Well, we're already experiencing the consequences of this administration's decision to target residential carbon emissions by attacking those home appliances that actually work, from gas stoves to washer and dryers to water heaters, thereby causing the price of these critically important appliances to skyrocket, while also reducing their availability. We are also suffering through this administration's decision to target the transportation sector by imposing tailpipe emission requirements, fuel efficiency standards, and propping up the electric vehicle industry, thereby causing the price of our cars and trucks to skyrocket, while also reducing their availability. What is the outcome of these misguided efforts? Government-imposed wretchedness, of course, but that is what this administration does best. It is no wonder that automobile repossessions are at an all-time high because of bad policies imposed by bureaucrats who are shielded from both accountability and having to suffer the consequences of their bad decisions. But real Americans suffer every day. This roadmap is bad policy, and I urge the adoption of my amendment. With that, I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
I rise in strong opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
I'd invite the gentlelady to come into any pulmonary ward in this country and see the cancers that attend to people who have suffered from carbon ingestion in their careers. This amendment prohibits funds to implement the Industrial Decarbonization Roadmap published by the Department of Energy in September of 2022. The purpose of the roadmap is to develop a strategic approach to decarbonizing the nation's industrial sector. I come from industrial America, while simultaneously creating good-paying jobs for American workers, spurring economic growth, developing U.S. leadership in these new technologies, and creating a cleaner, more equitable, and healthier workplace for all Americans. The industrial sector represents 30% of energy-related carbon dioxide emissions in the United States. To address the climate crisis, we must address these emissions. And you know, we got a lot more people living in this country now. When I was born, there were 146 million. Today, we've got about 335. It's going to go up to 400 million people. We have to think about our way of life and how we meet the demands of a new era. In addressing these emissions, we will also dramatically improve air quality and reduce millions of early deaths in our country and around the world. The roadmap focused on proven steps for energy technology innovation, advancing early-stage research and development. America's always been about the future, investing in multiple process strategies, and scaling through demonstrations and integrating solutions, including on the factory floor and places where equipment is repaired. A successful industrial decarbonization strategy is critical to supporting the existing over 11,400,000 workers in American manufacturing and a growing future workforce in the clean industry transition. And there's a lot of training that has to be done there. How is it that our firefighters across this country, just in the last few years, have discovered the cancers that attend to working in that extremely dangerous and important patriotic service to the people of our country? Their equipment is important, and what happens to their lungs and their bodies is really important. Again, I invite you to come with me into the hospitals of this country and meet the workers that have died and their families and the people suffering because of carbon ingestion. While it is clear we need an all-of-the-above energy strategy that taps domestic oil and gas and invests in clean energy, we must continue to promote energy innovation, a cleaner workplace in all sectors of the economy and in the American home as well. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. The Gentlewoman from Wyoming is recognized.
The administration's roadmap targets those key industries that significantly contribute to the stability of our nation's economy and supply chain, namely the petroleum refining, chemicals, iron and steel, cement, and food and beverage industries. Instead of helping our American businesses, families, and communities, the roadmap requires the use of substantially less efficient, less reliable, and more costly energy resources, including so-called clean energy, hoping to ultimately replace our ability to access our very own domestic, affordable, and reliable energy resources. One of the goals mentioned in the roadmap is to, quote, prepare the existing 11.4 million American manufacturing workers and future workforce for the, quote, clean industry transition. When I hear that this administration seeks to, quote, prepare the existing 11.4 million American manufacturing workers for the clean energy transition, and then watch as they attempt to shut down our mines while exporting manufacturing jobs to countries with dirtier products and less effective environmental policies led by dictators and despots, I admit I'm more than skeptical as to what preparing actually means. This administration's roadmap is unworkable and will bankrupt our country. With that, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized.
Well, you know, mining's a really difficult industry. Mr. Chair, I yield to the gentleman from Tennessee. Oh, all right. I yield back my remaining time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentlewoman from Wyoming is recognized.
Another goal highlighted in the roadmap supports a transition to no-carbon fuels. Mr. Chairman, Americans see through these goals. The reality is that no-carbon fuels are not only no such thing, and only a charlatan would argue otherwise, but they receive 4 times the amount in federal subsidies while producing less than 1/5 of the energy as compared to our legacy industries. These fuels are not only unreliable, even with the ridiculous amount of taxpayer subsidies, but environmentally destructive and require massive amounts of land per unit of energy produced. They kill birds and other wildlife by the millions. These unreliable projects simply cannot compete with our traditional and reliable energy resources, a fact borne out by their need for massive federal subsidies to be viable at all. Figures from the U.S. Energy Information Administration show that renewables received $15.6 billion in subsidies during fiscal year 2022 and an estimated $1.2 trillion from the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, being the largest recipient of such subsidies. It is thus entirely foreseeable that the second largest recipient of subsidies, according to the Energy Administration information, are lower-income families who struggle to pay their utility bills, proving that this administration is hell-bent on imposing energy poverty on every sector of our society. And why are they struggling? They are struggling because of rising energy prices and rising utility fees as the result of this administration's forced energy poverty. We simply cannot afford to pursue this energy transition imposed on us by radical leftists. As the sole representative of a state whose main industries have been hijacked by the federal government in the name of this pie-in-the-sky transition, I voice my strong opposition to this roadmap. And I ask my colleagues to join me in defunding the Department of Energy's implementation of this proposed industrial decarbonization roadmap. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve.
Time has expired. The gentlewoman's time has expired. The question is on the